Out of all the guests that have come through your studio, how many of them photograph you as much as I have?
Bro. Bro, no one is as like in your face as Chris Chu, man. People like, even when they want to photograph, they're very timid about it. They do it quick because it's just being respectful, you know?
Yeah.
But you're just like, oh my man. Like, yo, you're like, let me just go through 36 frames.
That's the thing, man. It's just the small minutia that I care about.
Oh, they're amazing photographers.
I met David through our mutual and his longtime friend G Moon. Born and raised a New Yorker, David is a photographer whose methods far contrast mine. I don't know if you guys remember when I was trying to make this ongoing series where I would interview some of my friends in the photo community, and through our similarities and differences in our processes, we would have some interesting exchanges. But when I began this episode with David, I realized we couldn't be more different. What turned into one filming and photo session back in October accidentally turned into a 10-month-old documentation, following his process in the making of his new photo book project Flutter, which also took him 5 years to make.
I have a bunch of work from 2019. I photographed in San Francisco and I just had my camera and I found myself just photographing every day, trying to make the same photographs I made in New York, or the last project I had before that was in China. I was in China. It wasn't happening for me in San Francisco. Like I couldn't make the same, it just wasn't there. And I found myself in nature a lot. I found myself walking to Land's End. You know, I came up with a bunch of work. So I had that work and I was like, that was my intent. I was gonna make this book, and then the pandemic happened, and then a whole bunch of stuff happened. I made 2 other books. I kind of put that work aside, and this year I revisited it, and I was like, you know, there's like an emotional connection that I had with the space I was in when I was in Land's End. It was a sunny day, and all of a sudden the fog rose. You know how like volatile the climate, and that was like one of the elements that like really stood out to me, and that was the starting point. I was like the volatility of like the climate in San Francisco, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, man, I remember being on that cliff and the wind, the fog coming in. I just felt like this like thing arriving, like a subject is arriving in front of me, and just engulfing this whole like entire area that just like kind of felt like it's like a takeover almost, you know. That was I picked up the project again in like 2021, 2 years ago. And it wasn't happening, man. I was like trying to force it. I knew I was forcing it. Like I was like, I have this like material. I want to make a book. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
You know, it doesn't work. Like that's what I mean. It's not science. Got to go back to the drawing board, and like I probably got to shoot more. I realized this year I was even like early last winter. I'm like, man, it's not really about San Francisco. And I started thinking about words that I could like describe it with, and I thought of like float. Like a lot of different words. Like I just like kind of like went on a journal and just like wrote like how I felt like, and they all didn't work. And you know, I finally like I saw like I think I was watching like fucking like BBC or some shit, Planet Earth.
Yeah.
And I was watching like birds like a hummingbird like kind of like
flapping its wings,
yeah. And I was thinking hover. I was like, that's not it. And I was like, flutter. Like I thought of the word, and then that word itself just kind of like activated like a whole different range of like things that I'm trying to describe, but also like other things that I didn't think of before. But like, man, this is like very powerful, because then I could see that in the forms in my photographs, and like, okay, this is something that I could like investigate and discover. So this brought me to a different lane, and I'm just like, and I went out there and tried to look for the word flutter.
Yeah.
You know, in the world. And then a powerful thing happened to me recently. I just lost my mom like a month and a half ago, and you know, it's like one of the hardest things that like I would say I've ever had to like go through, like even before like what happened. But like she died, she was taken by cancer, so it was like something that was like, it was like we found out late, so we had a finite amount of time, and it was like every single day was a different day, and it's just like very reminded me of like the volatility of like these ranging emotions. And I thought of that a lot. Things that I typically gravitate towards or things I want to work on are things that I am affected by. Like I could have made the book 3 years ago, but it didn't click for me. Like it didn't matter to me. You know what I mean? But now it's like, I'm like, I have to make this.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to make this while I have like this sense, still have the sensation in me, you know? The crazy thing about this is that this has been like in my mind like as an abstract idea. I mean, obviously you have like pieces and you kind of, you know, when you make a series, you kind of try to put it together and make sense of it. And this is just like the first time like seeing it in the scale that I had imagined the whole time. Why do I choose to print in a darkroom as opposed to scanning straight from a negative?
Scanning your straight negative and then just playing with those for the...
All parts of my process is connected. Like when I photograph, I think about the darkroom, I think about making books or making a body of work. Yeah. To answer your question, when instead of like working in the darkroom, it's really a relationship with your materials. It's literally using light, manipulating and sculpting it. And a lot of times like material would do something totally different. Even like your mood, like the way you feel that day, like just print differently, you know. That's what I'm connected. That's what keeps me like shooting film. That's what keeps me in like doing this. Like all these things just come in one. So like, yeah, I guess I could like skip that step, but it's the process that gives me ideas. It's the process that helps me go from San Francisco to float to Flutter. It's this process where I printed one negative like maybe 100 times, and it's this process that like evolves your practice or like your relationship to the work. So like without that, like I know it just doesn't feel fulfilling to me. I don't know. If I was to describe my work in a very simple sense, it's about observation, but it's not documentation. Like I'm not setting out to make a story. I'm not telling a story. Like that's not my ambition. Like, and I find myself like looking outwards and looking at reality, but most of the work is really looking inwards, like having that space. It's almost meditative when you're like standing on the street or you're walking through the city or you're walking wherever and you kind of get lost in either music or in the ambiance of like New York or wherever you are, and you know, just kind of like get into this transcendental realm and like you fall out of reality, and this innerness is like basically all your emotions, all your experiences, your likes, your dislikes. So along those lines, that's kind of what I aim for. If there's any meaning to my work, it could be nothing, but that would be something that I am, something that I would like strive to like my photographs to represent, like that kind of space of like between reality and like this fictitious world that I mysteriously have in my head, you know? Damn, look at this crooked ass paper. There's a negative that I worked on literally from the beginning all the way till this year. It's this image right here. This paper kind of gave me this like very muted sense. So I played around with it, and then I started to make a lot of mistakes. And you know, part of the darkroom process is about making mistakes. You know, when you start printing in a darkroom, you aspire to have a perfect print. You know, that's not possible. Perfection is not, you know, that's not a attainable thing. It's not reality. So that kind of like, that also brings me back to like my idea of Flutter. It's about letting go of expectations, allowing things to become and be. Thus, you know, your heart just sets out to be more free.
As I was photographing you over the time and not really finishing this video, I've noticed that like there was like a lot of like different iterations of like who you were, even like how you thought and what you were going through at that time. And I thought it was just so interesting that I have this like kind of sort of accidental large amount of photos of you where it kind of looks like a weird obsession. But like, I like how there's so much change though, because me as like a literal documentarian, I love the amount of differences between each session, even the location, because your studio was different from the one that we're sitting in now.
Yeah.
All these photos that we're going to show with what we're talking about right now is super interesting in the way that it's changed over time. Yeah. On the this is the final note, like where can people find Flutter?
Off my website, so you could pre-order the book. When I make my books, it's very hands-on. Outside of printing it, everything's gonna be brought back to my studio, assembled, hand-bound. For this project, I made a bandana, which is always a part of me, getting into incense, and it's been part of my daily practice. So I'm gonna have these two things that are available to help support the project and be able to go to printing and use all this money to make this thing.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for your time, man. I enjoyed many aspects of making this video. One, I got to show all of you a little bit more of how I go about documenting things. Number two, I got to witness a person's life change right in front of me and how his creativity reflected that. And three, showing a process that is so far different from mine. And before we wrap up this video, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. Squarespace provides some of the industry-leading tools for making a portfolio for photographers like us who want to be taken seriously. I recently renovated my website to be more focused on my documentary work. Squarespace allows a lot of customizability from their award-winning templates to something as simple as changing the background to black. I love how my website feels more mature, and if I have any questions or problems, I know I can contact the 24/7 customer service to get myself squared away. You can start a free trial today at squarespace.com/ChrisChew. Use my code ChrisChew at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching this very special episode on my channel. Will I keep this artist series going on? I have no idea. Please drop a comment down below on who I should try to get together with next. But in the meantime, make sure you subscribe, like, comment down this video. Check out David's book pre-order in the link in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Oh my God.